Zombie Tech. Welcome to Zombie Tech, a forum for engineers, scientists, and inventors to ponder on the technologies needed to survive the inevitable zombie apocalypse.
She's Eddie.
He's Whisker.
And who do we have this week?
Today we have Johnny Diggz, founder of like a bajillion different organizations, some of which Foxeo, Tropo, and the one that we found him through, Geeks Without Bounds. Hi, Johnny.
Hello.
Hi. So actually, before we started, we were asking important questions, and I wanted to first deal with those questions before we actually got into the content.
Oh, okay. You're dragging the pre-show into the show.
Well, because they're important questions. So, what was it? You were talking about... Okay, so Johnny is currently in a hotel in San Francisco, and we have had, at least 5, 6, 7, at least like 20, 25% of our interviewees from San Francisco. So theoretically, San Francisco would have an incredibly prepared zombie apocalypse crowd.
I hope so. We're going there in a couple of months.
At least marketing wise.
Okay. Right. But then I said, well, there are like a crap ton of people in San Francisco, so...
Yeah, I said that wasn't really a problem because it's pretty easy to run away from zombie hipsters due to their, clothing choices, etc. And I think Johnny...
And I made a comment about their glasses, and they might not be able to see because they've got their thick glasses on.
And then, now my problem is when they lose their glasses, does that mean they don't need to worry about it? Right. I mean, we don't need to worry because they'll be blind and running into trees or something.
We can make some educated guesses here, but I think Bradley Wojtek might know a little bit.
I mean, I don't think that zombies rely primarily on their eyesight. I suspect that there's
smell involved. Well, because in the movies, if you manage to hide from a zombie, they don't find you, right? Unless
right. And you can pretend like you're a zombie and they don't know.
Right.
They can't tell.
Right.
So it's not smell or sight. They're just dumb.
Right. So theoretically, the zombie apocalypse shouldn't actually be an issue. Aim for the eyes, not for the... Well, you can aim for the brain too, but then, aim for the eyes and you'd be good. I don't know.
Poke them in the eyes and the skinny jeans.
You think there'd be like an innate response if you aimed for like the nether regions? I don't know. Things to ponder on. So we found you again, like I said before, through Geeks Without Bounds, and you're the founder, which is totally cool. And I was just wondering what made you decide to start this group?
Well, it kind of all started a long time ago when 9/11 happened, and a group of all of my friends kind of felt like we wanted to do something, and we kind of felt paralyzed. And I was with some friends and bunch of geeks in Orlando, and I had some other connected geeks in the Bay Area and Silicon Valley, and we were all involved in .com startups, and this was obviously in the early 2000s, back when .com was still shiny and new.
Mm-hmm.
And we all wanted to do something, and we were like, well, let's pack up a bunch of routers, as much gear as we can get in trucks, and we'll go to New York and try to help. And after about an hour of discussing the reality of this, we decided that wasn't very practical. And then a few years later, in 2005, when Hurricane Katrina came through, the same kind of thing happened, and I was, following with many other people a live journal blog of some guys who had some servers running, and they had a generator in New Orleans, and they were keeping their customers up. But after they realized that things weren't right, and that a couple days go by and the cavalry wasn't coming in, these guys were directing a lot of the supplies that were going around, and they're just a bunch of geeks that had things going, and they had communications because that's what they do.
So
And
do they like volunteer and say, "Hey, government, we are set up here to be able to get communications, use us," or like?
I mean, it just happened. It just happened naturally because they had the only means. They had the power, and then they would put out a word to everyone else and say, "Hey, we're running out of diesel fuel," and some geeks get to their friends and say, "Who's got a truck?" And they drive the truck up and they fill their tanks up with diesel fuel. And this was just happening without any government help or any sort of organized assistance. They were just doing it and helping direct assistance to people who needed water and people who needed food and medical attention and whatnot. And these were just kind of data points. And the same thing kind of happened in when the tsunami happened in the Indian Ocean, and we had a little mini version of this. I'm from Central Florida, and one year we had in 2003 we had 3 different hurricanes roll through Central Florida in the same season. And simple things from, hey, do you have a flashlight, or who's got Wi-Fi, or who has power, who has ice, these kind of basic needs that we were able to communicate between my friends and our neighbors. And it kind of sort of germinated out of that. And when I was at a conference in New York, a conference that Jeff Pulver puts on, 140 Characters Conference. And it was the first conference that he had done. And it was sort of a, exploration of what is Twitter and how is it changing the world. And this was like 2009. So I kind of went on a whim because I didn't really get Twitter. I had followed Facebook and MySpace and all the social networks, and I just couldn't understand. I couldn't understand why we needed another social network.
Sure.
And why it was, so I kind of went and flew to New York on my own dime and just to kind of see what was going on. And they had this like traditional media panel, and it was like Rick Sanchez from CNN and Ann Curry from ABC and some dude from Fox News, and they were all talking over the weekend. Was the contested election in Iran, and all the violence was starting to happen in Iran, and Twitter sort of kind of came to the forefront as the main means of communication. And I was sitting in the audience, and this panel, they were all talking about Twitter and the media, and someone got up and said, "Hey, all weekend, all this stuff's been going on in Iran, and the media hasn't been doing anything. They haven't been reporting on it. They've been talking about Tiger Woods' divorce."
Right.
And what the hell are you guys doing? And the room kind of got a little angry towards the stage. And I think it was Ann Curry got a little defensive. And the whole video of this is available on the Ann Curry got a little defensive, and she was saying how, they kicked all the reporters out, and they were doing everything they could, and they kicked everybody out except for Doctors Without Borders. And I was sitting in the audience, and it kind of came, this like ding sort of happened in my head. And I was like, well, if they're not kicking up the doctors, the doctors need to look shit up. So they need some geeks to help them be able to look stuff up. Like, doctor needs Google. So, hey, this guy has these symptoms. I need to look this up.
Right.
So it sort of kind of came out of all of those individual events. And I came back from that thinking to myself, maybe I could do something, because I had started some telecommunications companies. I understood about communications, and I had a huge network of geeks that I knew personally. And I was like, hey, maybe I could start a group of friends, and we could do something like Doctors Without Borders. And so very naively, I presented this idea to Chris Perillo, who ran Gnomedex, and Jeff Pulver at 140 Characters Conference. And I got him in front of 2 crowds 2 days in a row and said, hey, wouldn't it be nice if we could, get geeks together to help people communicate in times of a crisis? And, I didn't really have a plan. I just was like, hey, we should do this. And it just so happened that one of the people in the audience that day was Willow. And afterwards, she and I were sitting at lunch together, and she said, "Hey, how are you going to do this?" And I was like, "I have no idea." And so we started talking about hackerspaces and hackathons, and I had never actually been to a hackerspace, and she invited me to come see hers, which she runs Jigsaw Renaissance in Seattle.
Right.
And so I went up and saw that, and I was like, "Wow, this is really cool. Are there more of these?" And she said, "Yeah, they're all over the country." And I literally turned to her and I said, "Do you like to travel?" She lit up and she was like, "Of course I do." And I'm like, "Well, why don't you go with me, and we'll go to a bunch of hackerspaces around the country, and we'll present this idea, and we'll get feedback and say, how would you do this? Who would you talk to? What tools would you use? What kind of an organization would you build?" And we spent 2 months traveling around the country visiting hackerspaces last summer, and that's sort of how the organization was germinated, and we launched on 10/10/10 last year, or I guess
2 years
a year
ago.
and a half ago.
Yeah, appropriate.
Yeah.
So what did these hackerspaces end up telling you guys?
A lot of them. One of the things we learned very quickly was there were organizations out there that were doing similar things. One of the organizations that we kept coming across was Crisis Commons, which is a volunteer group of people who volunteer their time to help in times of crisis. It's virtual volunteering, so it's not like sending people to Haiti, although people do that, but most of them are volunteering from the safety and comfort of their own couch.
Mm-hmm.
And sort of what came out of it was the idea that you don't have to, if there is a crisis or there is some sort of a disaster or violence or something, you don't have to drop everything, and you want to help. You don't have to drop everything that you're doing and quit your job and fly to Indonesia.
Right.
You can donate your time 5 minutes an hour, without even leaving your couch or leaving your desk at work, just by helping curate information or gathering details for other first responders who are on the ground, or helping onboard new volunteers in IRC or a Skype chat. And those kinds of things are very valuable because people want to help in these situations, but a lot of times they don't know how to help other than texting, to the Red Cross, which is a great thing to do. But those of us with specific technical skills can offer a lot more than that.
Right.
And that's sort of the area that Geeks Without Bounds kind of has been filling is this technical assistance to humanitarian organizations who are already on the ground.
Right. So, the apps that you guys are making, I struggled a little bit with this when I was talking to Willow before, but these apps, are they so that people in the midst of their time of need can use them, or is it so that people who are preparing to be in a time of need can use them? Does that kind of make sense? Like, so is it that people need to download and know how to use these apps before a hurricane comes, or is it something that they can download during a hurricane to figure out what next to help in, or what next to do?
I mean, all of the stuff that has been developed to date is very much in its infancy stage.
Mm-hmm.
The ideal or the ultimate goal would be to develop apps that can both be used at the time of crisis, but also in advance of crisis.
Mm-hmm.
For example, one of the hackathons that we did last summer was called Game Save, and I think Willow talked a little bit about this.
Mm-hmm.
But Game Save, the idea behind it, and to be honest, we didn't really get any fully developed apps. We had some good ideas come out of the first one. It was the very first hackathon that we did of this type. We're going to do another one next summer. But the idea is to build a game that maybe it's a game you play on your phone or on your Xbox or on a web some sort of web page that you can learn the process of triaging information ahead of time. So by playing a game, so it somehow makes it fun. So when, for example, when the earthquake happened in Haiti, there was a tremendous amount of text message information coming in, requests for help via text message. And most of these requests were coming in via a free-form narrative text, which means it was someone who was on their phone and they would type, "Hello, my name is Johnny Diggz. I am trapped under rubble with my wife. We need water and my wife's leg is broken. And we live at 123 Jones Street."
Mm-hmm.
And all of that is in Creole. So
sure.
So that message comes in, and let's say we're lucky enough to capture it via some technology, and it gets put into a report. Then what happened in Haiti's case was that message would get sent off to someone who could translate it, which could take minutes or hours. Meanwhile, clock is ticking. These people are still trapped under rubble.
Mm-hmm.
Message comes back. It's now translated into a language, presumably English or something that first responders can understand. Then they have to go through and parse through the information. So there's geolocation. There's information about where they are. There's information about what their needs are, and then there's some sort of a categorization of that and a prioritization.
Mm-hmm.
And they say, okay, these people, they need water. They're here, and they also need medical attention. So you know what resources need to be brought to them, presumably.
Right.
And then that is put on a map, and then someone has to physically go there. Hopefully you've got an accurate map to find a place to bring them the water and the medical attention that they need.
Right.
Fast enough.
Right.
So if you figure out a way to take that process and gamify it, so maybe ahead of time you learn the translation part, you learn the geolocation part, you learn this all through something that is somewhat fun. It's probably not going to be the funnest game you've ever played, but maybe if you earn enough points, you get enough credits, and you get a free iPhone from Apple because they're one of the sponsors of the game.
Right.
Like that kind of incentive that you can bring corporate sponsors together with some sort of gamification, and you're actually saving lives, theoretically. Now, that's still a dream. We haven't gotten there yet, but
sure.
That's the vision that's behind the game save idea.
Sure. And I mean, that's great for zombie preparedness, for instance. So, before waiting for zombies to come upon us, before we actually have a plan, we could always make an app that's, some sort of game where people can find out where they're, I don't know, the closest grocery store, the closest weapons store, the closest bunker is.
Yeah, absolutely. Imagine something that, I don't know where you guys are based, but imagine something that's in your local city, and you have a game that says you need to get from point A to point B, and all of these major roads are now unusable.
Due to
Plot
zombies.
the best next way.
Right.
And then you have enough people do that, and you've got a crowdsourced route for a variety of different scenarios.
Right. And if the zombie eyes have been poked out, then they won't be able to look at the app to make sure to see whether or not, there's easy food coming their way.
Yeah. I mean, that's as long as if you can build an app that shows where the tightest jeans are at Walmart
and the most glasses
and the most thick glasses
Yeah, that would work.
And know where the zombies will be. Not put the bomb.
Okay, you guys are silly. I've heard lots of different people go on this idea of gamification at various social media conferences in the last few years, but I don't believe that I've seen it actually applied to anything yet. Are you aware of any projects that are actually successfully using it?
Uh, no, I have seen some really cool tools that have been developed. One of the ones that that I think has a lot of potential is called Code Hero. I don't know if you're familiar with it. Alex Peak developed it. Another San Francisco guy. Code Hero is a game that teaches you how to make games, and it teaches you how to program while you're playing the game.
Oh.
It has a lot of potential, and I've been talking with Alex about modifying it to teach people how to prepare. I mean, we actually built one the last random hacks of kindness we did that teaches you some basic preparedness skills, and so taking it a step further would be the next, to actually process some of this data that could come in. I mean, I was just blown away when I first went to a conference last year, ICCM, it's the International Conference of Crisis Mappers, and there's a whole world of people who focus all of their attention on mapping crisis and crisis response, and helping in cases of where there's violence or some sort of a disaster. And one of the things that I was shocked over, because I come from a communications background. Voxeo is primarily kind of made its bread and butter in interactive voice response. So those automated phone system menus that you go through when you're not talking to a real person. And I listened for a couple of days and didn't hear anyone ever talk about the idea of, someone, when they talk about crisis response, they talk about people answering phones and talking, or they blindly collect information like the text messages that I was talking about earlier. But they didn't really talk about any kind of an interactive response system that says, let's say you send a text message that is a narrative, and then an automated system responds and says, "Hi, it sounds like you're at 123 Smith Street. Is that correct?" And so you can use these tools that we all find very frustrating when we want to talk to a real person. But when there's information overload, you've got so many people trying to get information to first responders, that you can at least you can start triaging that information quicker using automated systems. And in that case, I don't think, it's not necessarily a gamification, but it's sort of a interactive menu system that allows people to help themselves faster. It's sort of a self-service, customer service for emergencies, which is weird to say, but it's valuable, and that's one of the things I've been pushing since I attended that conference, is that they need to be looking at the same tools that we use in customer service that help companies service lots and lots of customers can be used in crisis or a zombie apocalypse.
Yeah, it's interesting applying IT infrastructure and data management skills to these sorts of problem sets. But I don't know, personally, at the end of the day, I think I'm glad I'm in the Midwest, because around here, we sort of take a different approach to the whole problem. Rather than trying to centralize the problem, we decentralize it. I bet if you went up the street here and knocked on doors, 70% of the houses would have things like chainsaws and generators and those kinds of things. In the case of a disaster, that's really, I mean, a much better solution than any sort of just infrastructure, government-based or organizationally based stuff. Just basically, if everybody has a lot of the stuff that they would need to take care of their problems or their immediate neighbors' problems, then you've got this whole decentralized safety net built into your society. So I don't know. I kind of look at it that way, but
Yeah,
if
I mean,
you've got that end, you've got this extra IT infrastructure stuff available to help facilitate that even better, then yeah.
Yeah. I wouldn't say that you'll never replace the basic concept of neighbors helping neighbors. That has to be the foundation of any of this, and you're not, it's not like I'm proposing or Geeks Without Bounds would propose that technology is going to solve these problems. At the end of the day, when someone needs help, there's going to have to be another human being involved. What we're trying to do and address is help when there are 50,000 people asking for help, how do we triage that information fast enough? And when you live in a rural area, it's a little bit different. I'm right now sitting in a hotel with, I've got 50 floors above me and 25 floors below me, and probably 200 people within a 100-yard square radius, sitting in their own bedrooms right now. If there's a major earthquake right now that knocks things around, you're talking about a lot of people in a very small area, and that's just in this this block, right? So there's a paradigm shift of who has a chainsaw versus 3 days from now everyone needs water.
And there's also the thing of like I don't necessarily think that the Geeks Without Bounds stuff would cause a centralized infrastructure, because I think if like normal people realize that they could have look up this app or use this app to see if any one of their neighbors had a problem.
Well, a lot of the good ideas that he's mentioning about it do have to do with decentralization, like gamification and crowdsourcing, all that sort of thing. It's applying a decentralized solution to a centralized problem, because you've got all the data flowing into one place, and then you're flowing it back out to be able to actually manage that much data. So it's, there is that centralized portion of it. And in terms of what he was saying about there being people around to help you, I think it's much better if they're digging you out to help you than if they're digging you out to eat you.
Absolutely. And that's always a fear when they do dig you out. Are they going to eat you or not?
I haven't had lunch yet. I guess you'll do okay.
I think that you're right, though. The overall concept, and this doesn't, I mean, when I initially conceived of this, and I admit that it was an idea, it has since evolved and really kind of moved or gotten broader away from just crisis response and disaster response. I mean, we've been we've seen, I kind of got not dragged in, but I was invited in to assist with the Egyptian revolution that happened last January. Due to my involvement with Geeks Without Bounds, there were people who set up phone numbers that people, when the government shut off the internet, people set up phone numbers, because I have, that's what Tropo does. We have phone numbers all around the world that you can set up a phone system and program something to do whatever. So, set up a phone number, people can call, leave a message. That message gets put into a Twitter stream as a link. Someone can click on that link and listen to it. They can transcribe it. They put it into a Google Doc, and then someone else comes in and translates it to English, and then someone else translates it to German and French, and then suddenly that what would have been one tweet if the internet had still been on is now 20 tweets in different languages that is being amplified 20 times over technology in
Sounds like there's
response to not
some
only
interesting IT
natural
infrastructure
disaster, but
issues in San
political.
Francisco at the moment. Skype is catching up, so I'm just talking over you for the moment. It was clipping out there. Johnny had a little bit of trouble getting the internet going in the hotel there this evening, so it might get a little jumpy here and there. Yeah, it's very, very cool what you can do when you actually have the infrastructure of a company behind you that already does something. You can really show up and just completely annihilate a problem where a small group of people just trying to cobble something together wouldn't necessarily be able to provide such a quick and easy solution to a problem. It was really interesting seeing all of the different ways that the information ecology adapted in that situation where they flipped the internet and it really just made people very creative very quickly. It's really cool to see. Addie's a ham, so we spent a lot of time talking to a lot of people who are into amateur radio, and those guys are really big on this sort of things too, being able to get into a disaster situation and reestablish communications, especially for Red Cross, emergency services, stuff like that. The first things that need to come back up online, the hams are always right there, ready to set up towers and generators and radios and get it to the point where people like you can get in there and put some bigger, better infrastructure in as quickly as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. This is a multi-solution approach. So you have many ways to communicate. You've got internet, you've got traditional telephone landlines, you've got wireless, you've got mesh networks, you've got ham radio, you've got satellite, and all of these things have to kind of work in concert because you never know what's going to be available in the situation that arises.
Mm-hmm.
So you need experts in all of them. I just was reading the Hack DC, the hacker space in DC that that Willow and I visited during our little Geeks Without Bounds tour. They just released a new Linux-based Wi-Fi mesh network package that you can run on any Intel-based machine with 802.11,
cool.
B or G, and it'll create a mesh network as long as it can hit another one. And
Nice.
as far as you can go with that, you can create a sort of ad hoc network through just Wi-Fi. I mean, these kinds of tools are being developed in response to things like governments turning off the internet or Occupy Wall Street type situations, and
Mm-hmm.
and we've got SOPA coming up that the government is potentially going to start regulating the internet in ways that we never really envisioned, and
Right.
and those kinds of things scare me too. Is that we as and that's what I think connects the geeks together, because one, we see these things happen and go, wait a second, that's not right. We
Right.
need to be able to communicate. That's going to screw things up.
Mm-hmm.
And whether it's a geek that's working for the army, or he's working for a hospital, or he's working for a university, or he's working for an IT department, they all think the same way. They
Right.
understand the protocols. They understand how the technology works. They're not thinking in terms of politics or economics. They think in terms of connectivity.
Right. So then let me ask, because I know Voxeo is set up in a lot of different countries, or you guys have the ability to connect a lot of different countries together, and also with Geeks Without Bounds being international, having, I'm sure, an international influence. How concerned how concerned are you guys about any governmental backlash? And has it happened? I mean, because like the Egypt thing, for instance, I mean, that was in some ways a kind of a dangerous thing to do for you guys, right?
Sure, sure. And I was very cautious not to you know to not involve I did that, I have to put on the correct hat sometimes.
Sure.
And Voxeo and Tropo have been, fantastic supporters of everything that Geeks Without Bounds has done. But at the same time, I'm well aware that they're, companies and they have customers and they, I have to be respectful of that.
Right.
And so we try really hard, and Will and I talk.
Looks like Skype dropped out again here, so we'll wait for that to catch up.
Back.
And that sounds like John's
Sorry.
back. There you go.
Sorry,
Is that all right?
as soon as you were about to go into the answer, it dropped.
Okay.
Okay, so go
This
ahead.
is ironic. You've got a ham radio operator. You've got a guy, me, who can design communications protocols from scratch, amongst other things, and a guy who does telecommunications for a living, and we can't get a cross-country call solid.
Ironically, the irony is just so thick here. So yeah, what I was saying was, I try to be very respectful of Tropo and Voxeo, because they do have customers, and Willow and I have talked a lot about the need to stay politically neutral.
Mm-hmm.
While we personally feel very strongly about certain things, there's one evening fairly recently where I was involved with. I was at one of the Occupy protests over in Oakland. I was taking pictures, trying to document things.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
All of a sudden, tear gas canisters start flying overhead, and so I'm tweeting from the Geeks Without Bounds account, documenting this, and Willow kind of slapped me down and said, "Hey, I understand that you're right in the middle of this, but you're tweeting too much personally."
Sure.
And so I had switched to my personal account. And,
sure.
It's one of those things that we battle internally about trying to stay as neutral as possible, but at the same time, it's difficult when you see violence happening, or
Mm-hmm.
people shutting off communications,
Mm-hmm.
and
and not naming one person bad or good.
I've got a good, I think, good solid stance here on this. When you're talking about basic inalienable human rights, like don't punch chicks in the head, or don't, chuck a tear gas canister against some dude's face, or, don't shut off people's ability to communicate with their families. These aren't things that need to be up for debate. These are things that are just like, duh, don't do that. We're human beings. We treat each other with respect. You don't do that. And those kinds of topics should be completely apolitical. When people try to make them political, that means that person is basically an enemy to society, culture, human beings in general, and their opinion just simply doesn't matter.
Yeah. I tend to agree, but it unfortunately, it's not always that cut and dry in the real world. I wish that it were, but the thing that really kind of keeps me up more at night is if we build a tool and somebody uses it, and because they used it, it somehow ends up causing people getting hurt.
I think
every tool can be used correctly or incorrectly. It's not, everything from a hammer to a rock.
No. Let's take this, like the recent research done in what is it? I don't know, somewhere like in Europe, where they found a way to make H1N1 incredibly virulent, like so that what was it, 60% or 80% of people who were infected, or I don't know how they tested it, but it was just that 80% of whoever of the subjects exposed to it would be infected and would die. And they were debating whether or not they wanted to release and publish how to do this.
Well, it's a retrovirus, right? And
I don't know what it is.
Retroviruses are extremely important to be able to create cures for certain types of diseases. So I mean,
cause zombies.
Yeah,
Well, so then
we interviewed
that's the thing.
Mira Gran a while back, who wrote a book just on this topic, where they combined a couple of viruses together to cure the common cold in her book and cure cancer, but the two interacted with each other and created zombies, and everything went to crap. So, you know, we've covered this sort of thing before, but I'm not talking about those types of... We're not talking about creating a dangerous virus here. We're talking about an app for a cell phone. We're talking about communications of infrastructure stuff.
Whisker.
There's a perfect example, not perfect, but an unfortunate example of what happened with Austin Heap, his haystack program in Iran. You know, Iran during the contested elections, he set up these. He and a group of people, I will say, set up some servers that were presumably secure, that protesters were using to organize themselves to protests. Government agencies got a hold of, got into the servers and basically used the exact information. They thought they were secure, use that information, and people would show up for protest, and the government would be there, and they would just arrest everybody.
Right.
The perfect example of a tool that was intended for one thing being used in the exact opposite manner.
Right.
You know, people using Ushahidi to track protests in Oakland, and to, you know, they target where there's violence happening, and the police use that exact data to go find where the people are to go arrest them.
Right.
That's the kind of that is kind of scary.
So then when it comes to things, I mean, because that's also part of crisis mapping in a manner of speaking. I mean, how do we deal with that? I mean, because
I mean, if the zombies have an IT department and they start using our crisis mapping tools against us to find where the fattest, juiciest people are,
right? The fattest, juiciest.
where are the really big brains? Apparently, they're on San Francisco. And the zombies then can use the map to know that they need to get, cut out the Golden Gate Bridge, and they cut off the Bay Bridge, and they just come from the south, and they corner us all, and we're screwed.
Any zombies listening now probably now have a plan. Good. Now that Johnny Diggz has said this, it shall be done.
I like that plan. All zombies go to San Francisco. Leave me alone.
It's horrible. So I mean, I can understand that difficulty then, because it's easy enough when when people need help because of it, quote unquote, easy enough when people need help or an app because of a natural disaster. But when it comes to political disasters and that type of thing where you have a people in power and a people without.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a very difficult question.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, but I think it sort of comes, it's related. The ability to communicate as freely as we can is part of the cause of why some organizations are so set on trying to make it so that we can't do that anymore. There's some people in this world that don't want everybody else to be able to communicate freely. So the good thing causes the bad thing, and then the bad thing abuses the good thing to do its bad thing. Just sort of cyclic,
Yeah. I mean, the way I look at it is that anytime communications break down, and whether that's because, communications can break down for a lot of reasons beyond technology. Technology is just like the most tangible one, but it can also break down because of a generational thing. It can be break down because of a language barrier.
Sure.
It can break down because of economic differences.
Sure.
So there's a lot of different ways that communication can break down, and helping bridge those gaps is, I think, the most important part, because when communications break down, that's when people get scared. And when people get scared, that's when people start panicking and people get hurt, and hate leads to fear, and fear leads to anger, and anger leads to
Eating
Darth Vader.
brains. Yeah.
yes, started quoting Yoda there for a second.
You didn't catch that, Whisker? I caught that. Ah. He calls me culturally inept. I beg to differ. That's awesome.
I will hope you excuse me for quoting the new trilogy.
The new oh, that's okay. It's Star Wars either way. That's all right. So, I mean, at this point, you guys are like you mentioned before, kind of a lot of the projects are still in their relative infancy. How do you guys end up communicating with all of these separate groups of people, whether it be separate hackerspaces or even just individuals coming off of the street? What have you found works?
So, one of the things that we've been very successful with is reaching out to the other existing organizations. So, for example, Crisis Commons is one that has that we. I met Heather Blanchard very early on, even before we formally started Geeks Without Bounds. She was one of the founders of Crisis Commons. Pascal Schubach, who runs emergency management in King County, and for basically all of Seattle, is also part of Crisis Commons. We've met people like that along the way. I don't know how, but somehow I get lucky. And so when I first started talking about this, I was at a conference actually here in San Francisco. I got up in front of probably about 200 people at 140 Characters Conference, and I gave my little pitch about Geeks Without Bounds. There was a guy in the audience at 140 Characters Conference named Ethan Zuckerman. He started the Geek Corps he's about 10 years ago, and he basically gave me a blueprint of all of the piles of shit that he stepped in and said, hey, here's all the things to look out for that I did that really screwed things up for me. And here's a list of people who you should talk to. And I'll be happy to introduce you to any of them that you would like to. And that I followed that man's instructions to a letter. Because I felt so lucky that he was actually in the audience, and he introduced me to Patrick Meyer, who was one of the founders of Ushahidi, which is that crisis mapping software that was started in response to the elections in Kenya, and later was used for snowball fights.
Nice.
And Heather Blanchard and Crisis Commons and Invinio and Kiva and just a host of people and organizations that were doing really good stuff in this area of helping manage virtual volunteers and crowdsourcing and crisis response and technology and this sort of emerging area that I didn't even know that I was stepping into. I just thought, hey, wouldn't it be nice if geeks could use their powers for good instead of playing World of Warcraft?
Right.
Oh yeah.
Right.
It's really good that you got to be able to tap into that sort of stuff, and because we've been getting some feedback here locally in the community that a lot of folks around here are actually interested in getting some sort of a space put together. So having contacts like you and Willow and a lot of the other people we've interviewed is really handy for us because it'll allow us to provide some sort of service like that to our community here locally with a lot less hassle getting things going.
And then
Yeah, I mean, the people who are, the maker communities and the hackerspace communities, really kind of grok this stuff innately. They understand. They're the kind of people who like to build things for the love of building things. They like to help people because they like to teach. They like to they want to help, and maybe they have a job that they can't do that, and this is their creative outlet. And those are it's like, to use a marketing term, like the low hanging fruit. Those they're really chomping at the bit to be able to use their skills and talents to help other people. And so tapping into that passion has been really powerful for us. And Willow has been hugely instrumental in helping that. I mean, she really was my tour guide. I had never even stepped in a hackerspace before I met Willow. And now since then, I've been in probably 20 or 30 around the world. And
awesome.
just kind of jumped headfirst into that community. And almost, it was like I went to my first maker fair last year, and it was like, oh my God, this is what I wanted science fair to be when I was in middle school, but it never was. Like, this is an adult science fair.
Right.
And so if you guys have never been to a maker fair, I highly recommend that you find one or start one.
Yep. And we're hoping. We actually just finished a IEEE talk this like a couple weeks back.
And, a couple days ago, actually. But by the time this goes up, it'll be a couple weeks.
See, I was trying to be
presented
tricky.
For I got it. We presented for IEEE the other day, and afterwards, some folks came up to us and requested that we become participating in being judges or organizers or something in the local science fair. I was like, wow, I can only imagine how cool my science fairs would have been growing up if crazy people who did zombie podcasts were involved.
I just make everybody do zombie science fair projects. How to cure zombieism.
That if somebody did that, I think they get the blue ribbon.
I think so too. I would give it to them.
Give them a pile of free microcontrollers. There you go, kid. Save the world.
Yeah, I mean, but there's this guy out here, Mitch Altman, which if you guys haven't talked to him, you should. I met Mitch. He was one of the founders of Noisebridge Hackerspace here in San Francisco. Mitch invented a device called TV Be Gone, which is a little simple remote control that you press a button and it goes through all the codes of all the TVs and will turn any TV within its range off.
Yeah,
and
I think I've heard of it.
A few people we've interviewed didn't know Mitch, so
yeah, and now Mitch goes around the world and teaches people how to solder and teaches people how to build TV Be Gone remotes so they can turn off their television and actually do things rather than absorb content that is spewed out from their television.
Right.
I think that that's such a noble idea and a noble cause that he lives his life to do that. Like, I just, it amazes me.
Well, one thing about Mitch that's fun is seeing how much he can polarize people too. It's like you've got people who sort of get what he's trying to do and are like, hey, that's a good idea. And then you've got other people that are like,
well, he's out there. I mean, the man has rainbow colored hair but when you talk to him, you'll realize that not only is his heart in the right place, but he's a brilliant engineer. And I think he taught me how to solder, and I think to date has taught over 30,000 people how to solder.
Nice. Very nice.
And I think, when the zombie apocalypse happens, we're going to need
Solderers.
soldering skills.
It's true.
Yeah,
It's true.
he sounds like he would be a fun zombie tech guest, actually.
I think you're right.
Zombies be gone. We should
Zombies
see.
be gone. Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of the thought, the idea behind his invention. I think is that
True.
television is kind of creating a generation, or has been creating generations of zombies who, go home after school or after work, and they turn on the television and they stare at a box. And I mean, if you can imagine, if aliens came down from outer space and for some reason they could not see what was projected on the televisions, they just saw us staring at these boxes. I mean, they would think we were all nuts.
Yep. That's a good point.
We all just, I mean, it was 4 years ago, I decided to get rid of television from my house.
Mm-hmm.
And within a year, I was a professional piano player.
Yep.
Yeah.
I made that decision around, 1997, 98, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
Throughout the TV, haven't looked back since. Don't care. Know how to do a million things that other people think only a college could teach you how to do. It's not true, people. It just takes a little bit of free time.
Yeah, I mean, people ask me all the time, like, how do you find the time to do this? I'm like, I don't watch TV. I mean, I hate to say it's that simple, but it is that simple. You don't need to watch another rerun of Seinfeld.
Right.
You've seen it already.
Right.
3 times, 5 times, 20 times.
All right,
Friends,
so
it's still the
we're running a little short on time here, so we've got to get to... There's a few questions that we like to ask.
The questions that actually truly pertain to zombie tech.
Just a few of them that we like to ask everybody, just to have a common thread running through the whole thing.
Indeed.
Sure.
So, top 3 tools you would take to a zombie apocalypse bunker.
Top 3 tools I would take to a zombie apocalypse bunker.
Mm-hmm. And before you answer, I'm just gonna say, so we just interviewed a chef, and her
PBX
tools.
System?
What? Okay,
Your
stop
own
talking,
cell
Whisker.
phone
No,
node?
no, stop. Wait,
Hmm.
wait. I'm trying to explain here. So it's her knife set, which includes like a bajillion different types of knives. That we considered one tool.
Okay.
Yep. So if you can strap an MRI machine like some of our previous members to your back, that can be a tool. Just to let you know.
Okay. Well, I think that I'm gonna stick with my Shaun of the Dead, and I think a cricket bat would definitely be one of them.
Okay.
Now, can I build on any tools that someone else already has? Like, does somebody else have like a cell phone tower that I can bring my cell phone connect to?
I don't believe
I don't think
anyone
we have a
has
cell phone
actually
tower.
brought a cell phone node or tower
All right.
yet.
Well,
so
I think how about a generator? Can I bring a generator?
We have a generator.
Have generators. We've got
We already have-
people with solar panels, all sorts of things. We got power.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're gonna make zombie mouse wheels to generate our power. We'll just sit in front of them, and then they'll run towards us, and the mouse wheel will generate.
We like surround the bunker with treadmills.
Correct. That'd be awesome. That'd be excellent.
Our guests are very creative people.
I think that I mean, I'm a musician, so I think that we all need some entertainment. So I would bring a piano just
Awesome.
to, because you never know. There might be a song that really calms the zombies.
True.
Yeah, I've seen that in a few zombie
Very
movies.
true.
Yeah.
And we're gonna be blaring warning songs from the zombie truck. So we're gonna need some way to make those songs.
Exactly.
Our zombie bunker here is a completely outfitted recording studio, so I feel you.
Having spent many hours entertaining drunk people and dueling piano bars, I know a few songs that really seem to get the zombies singing.
Can you
Um,
imagine?
Okay, so
It'd be you could make a movie about a zombie musical, you know? Like that'd be one
I
way to quell the angry zombie hordes.
I actually have a concept of a TV sitcom called Meet the Zombies. Um,
Nice.
that I've been working on and off for a little while, but the it's kind of like the Munsters. It's a sitcom. There's the zombies and they live down the street from the vampires, and the werewolves live down the street, and they kids come home from school and dad's like, "Did you eat brains today?" And they're like, "No, Dad. Did you really?" Um,
Meanwhile, there's like an
and
earlobe hanging out of the mouth.
exactly. I didn't. I swear, I didn't eat any brains today.
Just the scalp, Dad. Just the scalp. Oh, gross.
um, and the third thing, I guess, would be can I have like some sort of like the RV from Stripes?
Sure.
You know, the attack RV that has like all the missiles that come out and
well, who was it? Willow brought a giant blimp.
That's right, Zeppelin.
Ooh,
Zeppelin. So if she's getting away with Zeppelin, go right ahead.
Yes. I want the armored RV from Stripes.
Awesome. Awesome. A prepared RV. I can handle that.
Yeah. I want the piano in it, and then I can have the bat just in case everything else fails.
Now, so actually, does that clear up 2 more slots for tools? Because if you think about it, you could strap the cricket bat to like
Oh, this is almost
the
as
side.
bad as last week when Chef was trying to duct tape rolls to her shotgun so that she could squeeze extra tools into her list.
The first thing I have is a portable black hole.
Excellent.
That's
I approve.
Inside the portable black hole, I can have an infinite number of things, and that's one thing.
That'd be pretty brilliant. You could protect us all already.
Well, if we had that, we could just throw the zombies into it, and then we don't have a show. So let's not go down that rabbit hole.
Cool.
Down that portable black hole.
And let's see. Oh gosh. What's the other question I usually ask?
You normally ask them what book they would bring.
Oh, yes, that's a good one.
You know, because this can be very revealing.
That's true.
What book I would bring?
Yes.
Well, my favorite book of all time is Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
I was going to mention it earlier because it sounded like, yeah.
So I would bring that with, I would actually prefer to have like an entire edition of Wikipedia as well, but which is, I think, our closest thing to an actual Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
True.
But, imagine how much paper that would take.
To print the whole thing out.
Yeah, some of our previous guests whenever they have to learn a new chip or something for electrical engineering, they print out a copy of its data sheet and they keep them in binders after binders after binders. So these guys will be able to re-engineer
just about anything.
The modern society back up in case the internet goes out.
True.
We're gonna need that, yeah. I think
it's really good to have hard copy of that sort of thing.
Yeah, it is, just in case those generators aren't working.
Mm-hmm.
We run out of the diesel fuel.
But we have had a distinct lack of like entertainment literature added to the library, so I think that's an excellent addition.
Cool.
Well, Douglas Adams, I think will be happy to know that his work is his most admired work is surviving the zombie apocalypse.
So long, and thanks for all the brains. All right. Is there anything in particular you want the listeners to know about? Links, anything like that?
Just Geeks Without Bounds, GWOB.org is where you can find out more about Geeks Without Bounds. And also just wanted to throw out big thanks to Tropo, Tropo.com. They've been a huge supporter of everything that we've been doing. And so if you have any need for communications, SMS, text to speech, multiple language, speech recognition, that kind of stuff for your apps, check out tropo.com.
Cool.
All right, Jenny, thanks for joining us.
Yep. And I just wanted to add a couple sites. So your personal one you also have is Diggz.org.
Diggz.org.
Yep, Diggz.org. And
I have just recently started putting content up there as my New Year's resolution. I had kind of tapered off last year, and I reinvigorated Diggz.org just this week. So
there you go. And then he's on Twitter at Johnny Diggz. Diggz with a Z. So
Diggz with a Z.
Yep.
You guys can find this show every week at zombietech.tv on Thursdays, and our Twitter is at TYMKRS. Thanks for listening. We'll see you guys all next week.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.